welcome back to another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well. The NBA Finals tip off 1 week from today, and tonight we're ranking all the storylines heading into the finals, all the spicy little narratives, all of the spicy little subplots. It's going to be a lot of fun. Alongside me, two guys who are currently weaponizing their time, Wayne Spooney and Jake Eisenberg. But we're very happy to welcome in our guest from CelticsBlog and CLNS. It's Noa Dalzell. Noah, how's it going? Welcome.
It's going great. I just got my final credentials like 5 minutes ago, so it's going even
go.
better.
Sick. That's awesome.
Exciting.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Wow, good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, look, before we get into it, the name of the show is First to the Floor. It's because of our love for hustle plays and like sacrificing one's body for the betterment of the team, all that good stuff. And watching the highlights of the recent Celtics beat Riders hoop scrimmage, couldn't help but noticing one Noa Dalzell absolutely diving for a loose ball.
Oh, Jack, she just beat you for that board. Oh.
Amazing play. Was that Jake
Cooking.
with the behind the head like pass you on the perimeter as
Yeah,
well?
I was thinking. I do feel bad. I'll just clear the record.
Don't feel bad. Don't do it.
You cooked him.
That was like the fourth game that we played that day. So I didn't run out of steam, but I think if you looked at the first game, some people were playing a lot better at the beginning. And so I feel a little bad that the highlights came from the end. But it was a lot of fun. I was glad everybody was down. I kind of forced everybody to go too, so then I felt bad when people were getting slandered. So I encouraged this game and got the ball and got the gym and everything.
That was all part of the plan. You were just like, I'm going to lure you guys in. We're going to play a minimum of 4 games.
Yeah. There's 4
I know. And then I'll
quarters.
send the cameraman on the 5th game when I'm just getting warmed up.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I love it.
Love it. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Noah, we'll kick it off with you, and we'll just go around the room until we've exhausted all of the big storylines and narratives going into the NBA Finals. Folks in the chat, watching live or watching later in the comments, let us know what you think are the spiciest narratives heading into the NBA Finals. Also, yes, we do not know yet who the actual finals opponent is. Statistically, though, it's very likely to be the Mavs. So if we sound like we're leaning a little Mavs heavy here, like there's a good reason for that. It's probably going to be the Mavs, although tonight, go Timberwolves.
Yes.
All right, Noah.
Yeah.
What do you think is the consensus, like major storyline heading into these NBA Finals for the Celtics?
Just in general or for a particular matchup?
Whatever you want.
Well, whatever you want to go with.
Okay, cool. So I would say if we're looking at Dallas, there are so many storylines that it's almost like a reporter's dream. I feel like there's so many narratives to discuss that you don't have to make anything up. There's Porzingis going back to Dallas. There's Kyrie Irving back in Boston. But I think more importantly, someone's going to win a championship for the first time. And that to me is like the most exciting part about the NBA when you know that there's going to be a new star that's now going to be in that forever category of, leading his team to a championship. And so I think, obviously I'm hoping that the Celtics are able to pull it off. If it's not them, it'll be Luka or it'll be Anthony Edwards. Like there's going to be somebody that becomes a real, superstar legend this, in the next 3 weeks. And that's a pretty cool thing. And then just as far as matchups, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. I'm probably in the minority that I think that the Timberwolves are a better matchup for the Celtics and have thought so from the beginning. Just because I think at the end of a game, I would rather be facing Minnesota than facing Dallas. Though I do have more confidence in Boston after what we saw from the last round. But they each have, I'm sure we'll go into it, but they each have kind of their own strengths and weaknesses as a matchup for the Celtics.
Yeah, someone's going to take the belt. Bill Simmons did his historical belt ranking going back to the 70s. It is an interesting one because I personally don't think any of the remaining best players on these teams are going to have a claim to like the best player in the league. I love Jayson Tatum. I don't love Luka Doncic as much as Jayson Tatum, but he, I think, would be someone that I've already seen people kind of pushing him to potentially being the best player in the league. But like when you get that title, it just changes the narrative around you. Just even if you maybe your skill or your impact on the game doesn't quite as soon as Giannis won that ring, all that stuff about losing to the Raptors after going up 0-2. He still has his own issues in the clutch due to the nature of the type of player he is. But like once you get that title and you have that performance on the biggest stage, it just changes your legacy forever. And it's gonna be a big deal for one of those 3 guys.
Yeah, dude. And we've talked about it a little bit. Like, if Tatum gets this ring, like all the slander, all the BS going on about Tatum, it's just over. Like, you can just post the picture of him holding up the trophy, and that kind of ends the conversation. You're right. Nobody judges Giannis for flaming out in the playoffs in the first round last year, right? But that's because he's got a title, and that's really, you just need one, and it completely changes the narrative for you for the rest of your career. I mean, look at the way people talk about Barkley. So it's super important for all those young guys. And I think they're young teams. They're all well-coached teams. Like, whichever team wins the title, I think will be poised to be in the mix and maybe be the favorite for the next few years too. So one of these teams could kind of go on a run as well.
Yeah, I think it's legacy defining is sort of the top narrative here. Like, whoever comes out with the win here is going to have their legacy, like you guys mentioned, like kind of cleansed of all of the past wrongdoings, the past failures, if you will, for lack of a better term. If you come out with that title, all of the mistakes and failures of the past are kind of washed away, and it's just looked at as this smooth trajectory to the title, I think. So obviously, all of us here really hope that happens for the Jays, and online, it feels like every day we're sort of combating all of the hate and vitriol coming from particularly the mainstream media, and to see that cleansed by the Celtics winning the title would obviously be incredible. So it sounds like we're all in agreement that that's kind of the legacy side of things is maybe the top narrative heading in. Jake, what do you think?
Well, yeah. So I mean, like the Tatum piece in particular, and RJ had a comment here about why is JT anointed, why is it not JB, which we can touch on a little bit in a second here, but. For me, like Tatum's legacy and Tatum's name has just been like, I don't know why or how. He's just dragged through the dirt. Greeny on Get Up with them with I think the take of the year that Jayson Tatum didn't smile big enough after Jaylen Brown won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. And Pat McAfee actually called him out on his show today. Like, what are you talking about? And Greeny kind of just admitted that he's like been setting this agenda personally. But I have some Tatum historical numbers here. That I think really get punctuated with a title for Tatum. So first, if you're not following Max on Twitter, at ILISSMX14, like he is like the Tatum propagandist on Twitter. So if you're not following him, it's very important to be doing that. But he's like kind of tracking Tatum's playoff totals through his whole career. But through age 26, Tatum wins. He's fourth all time through age 26 behind Kobe, Tony Parker, and Magic. Points, second all time in points before through age 26. If he scores 95 points in the finals, he'll pass Kobe. Third in rebounds behind Bill Russell and Magic, like absurd. Seventh in assists, still 10th in blocks, 10th in steals, 13th in blocks. Every player ahead of him is a big man in the blocks category. First in 3-point makes, Jaylen second. Minutes, he's third behind Tony Parker and Kobe, and like all of that stuff's awesome. Like it's astounding. The fact that he's been so successful in the playoffs at such a young age in the same conversation with like all the all-time greats. There's just one very glaring difference between those guys and Jayson Tatum right now, and it's a title. He's still only 26. Like a lot of these guys, aren't winning titles before certain ages, but if he wins a title, all of these numbers, all this historical stuff that Tatum has been doing can't just be like, yeah, but he never was able to get it done on the biggest stage, as dismissive and ridiculous as those narratives are. For him to punctuate how historically great he's been on the biggest stage from such a young age would just be so awesome for everybody, but for me personally as well. It would make me feel a lot better.
Please fucking win the title, Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It would be so good for all of us. All right, Spoonie, what do you think is the number 2 narrative, and then we'll get Noah's reaction to that.
All right, well, I'm going off beaten path here. Maybe not really. I'm the resident hater, especially LeBron, but also especially Kyrie Irving. Kyrie coming back to Boston. Sure. I think he's lost 10 straight to the Celtics. Our guy, the Celtics unofficial mascot, Green Runs Deep, said he's declaring that we shouldn't boo or chant at Kyrie. I firmly disagree with that. That's part of what sports makes fun. What makes sports fun, man. You got to have villains. Obviously, don't go like out of bounds or do anything crazy, but boo him all you want. I think that'll make it more fun. And like, I just want to see this dude lose. I know I'm a hater. That's fine.
Well, where are we? Yeah, are we pro con on the FU part of it? Because I think booing's okay, but Noah, FU, are we crossing a line?
Me and Ben can't talk.
No, we cannot.
Oh, no, I think so I'm actually, you'll ask people on the beat, like I'm the biggest hater of the chants. So
Yes.
we could probably debate that, but it's not to me that we don't want there to be a villain or anything like that. It's just corny, I think, when it's been so long and it's like the third quarter and your Celtics are up by 15 and like still that's the primary focus of the chants of the fan base. Like, I don't know. And I can't even really articulate it, and I've tried to, but it just leaves me sitting there, like being in the building, feeling icky that this is the priority right now. And I'm actually really bummed. My friends all know I'm really bummed that like we're gonna see this be a major storyline in the finals, just because I think there's way more exciting and important things that are going to be taking place, and probably like a lot of the discourse will be around Kyrie and around the booing and around like maybe someone went too far and said something like super offensive or threw something at him. Like the whole thing of it, I wish we could just avoid it. Exactly. Yeah. Throwing water bottles. Who knows? Like who knows where it's going to go, especially when tensions are high, especially if he's playing well or if it's a close game or something like that. So I don't know. I think Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum were both asked about it the last time Dallas was in Boston. And they both said, like, we have no problems with him. Like, we get that the fans still do. And Jaylen was like, all I ask for is, like, why not boo every superstar that comes into our building like that? And I think that's a fair point. Like, if we're going to, if they're going to do it, then do it. But I'll just say, as someone who was at every Celtics game in the playoffs, like, the crowd has not been very good. So it's a little bit annoying that if the crowd, like, all of a sudden wakes up because Kyrie's there. It's like, wake up because you have a star in your building. That's my thinking about it. But I get it. I get where it comes from. It's just a general feeling that I get when I'm hearing it, and just, like, it's so nonstop. And I don't know. I just think it's like, are we ever going to stop? Like, he's going to be like 60 walking down the street.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm okay if it comes back when he's 60, but for right now, I'm completely over it. Like, I don't want to say I've forgiven Kyrie for all the shenanigans back in the day, 2019, 2020, and the way that he departed ways with the Celtics. But for now, you touched on it now, where there's so many other things to focus on. There's so many other tasty focal points as far as like we've got the Jays, we've got this amazing team, we've hopefully got a healthy Kristaps Porzingis. This is an excellent team, and we should be funneling our energy into positively cheering for these guys. I know people are probably going to be shaking their heads at me as I say this, as opposed to booing for Kyrie Irving. And I don't know, Spooty and I, we were at Game 3 of the NBA Finals. And like the sheeple that we are, joined in on the fuck Draymond chants just because they were happening. There was a child, do you remember this movie, in front of us that did not stop us?
He was yelling it too.
Chanting. Yeah, he was a Warriors fan.
He was?
He was looking to his dad being like, what are they saying, Dad? And we kept chanting those bad words right behind him. But I guess suffice to say, it did not help. It did not contribute to a successful final series for the Celtics. So I've been burnt by that experience with Draymond. I would not advocate for booing or chanting anything at Kyrie, just because I think time has passed and time heals all wounds. It's over. We've got more to focus on. Jake, I don't know, the way that you're kind of shaking your head, I feel like you feel differently.
I'm torn. So I went to that same playoff run where the Celtics played the Nets in round 1. So that was my first ever Celtics game. Game 2, I've talked about it a million times. 17-point comeback. Peyton Pritchard in the fourth quarter. One of the greatest moments of my life. And Kyrie, though, like, people just love booing. I think it's not even about Kyrie. I think it's just a mob mentality. Like, people that I was around, there's just some people that, like, don't care about this. Like, they care about the Celtics, but they care so much about, like, just being able to get out some like angst from their own lives and direct it towards Kyrie Irving. So like, I can't have my cake and eat it too, because I think, yes, we should boo. The problem is, I know that's going to go too far. It's going to end up being a story. There's going to be someone who throws something. There's going to be someone that does the wrong thing. That's the problem, is that I know you take any sample size of 20,000 people in anywhere, there's going to be X amount of people that are just going to go too far. So that's like going to happen. So that's why I don't want it to happen. But on the other hand, I like fans being emotional. And as you said, Noah, like, this has been a kind of underwhelming playoff crowd relative for TD Garden. So I like that there's going to be juice from that perspective. I think there'd be juice anyway for the finals. But when it comes to Kyrie, like, and what he did to the Celtics, like, he asked him to come back. He had a freaking commercial saying he was going to retire his jersey in the rafters. Like, it was pretty bad. He was responsible for like one of the most like miserable seasons relative to expectations like ever. Like, that team should have just been so much better, and a lot of it was because of Kyrie. So I understand people holding that. I personally didn't do the "fuck you, Kyrie" chants when I was in the building, but I kind of enjoyed the energy of it at the same time. So that's the biggest cop-out answer ever from me there. But yeah.
I will say, though, I like your point. I think for me, that's what it is. It's not about the people that are just like booing. It's the fact that someone's going to cross the line. And like people just like they did in 2022. And I just hate that feel. And it's not going to be one person. Like there's so many drunk people. They're going to be so riled up. And so I think it just opens the door to like a bad incident happening that then takes over the storyline. That takes over like what we have to talk about as media. Like I just don't want that to happen. If I could get a guarantee that it's just going to be booze the way that it was for Caleb Martin the whole first round, like that was kind of fun. It wasn't personal. I don't think anybody ever. But with Kyrie, I talk to people. The hatred that they feel, it scares me a little bit, honestly. So that's where I think it comes from more so.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm advocating for tasteful booing. I certainly don't want anything crazy to happen. Like, I think it makes all Celtics fans look absolutely terrible. Like when that asshole threw the water bottle, and you just know, like, oh man, here we go again. Like this is gonna, and we're just gonna hear about that nonstop. I don't want that, but I think when he touches the ball the first time in the TD Garden and a chorus of boos hits him, I love that stuff, man. I do. I think it's fun. But yeah, if anything goes too far, I would rather no booing than it go too far. And maybe I'm trying to get my cake and eat it too, which is probably the case. But yeah, I hate when people take it too far. It's the absolute worst. But some booing, it's just fun, man. It gets you into it. I'm sorry. Call me corny all you want, Noah. I'm an old man. I am.
Tasteful booing, I think, is fine. But it's so easy to just cross that line from tasteful to extremely distasteful. All right, so ranking the top storylines here, we've covered the legacy on both sides. We've covered the Kyrie potential return to Boston if the Mavs are lucky enough to close out this series, which I think they might be. Jake, we'll go to you now. What do you think is sort of the next ranked storyline going into the NBA Finals?
I think it's Tatum versus Luka, or Tatum versus whoever comes out. The Dallas Mavericks are currently up 16-10 in the first quarter here. Luka versus Tatum's going to be a storyline, and I just wanted to be like, Luka's been, again, anointed the chosen one throughout this playoff run because of, he's had a really good series. But prior to this, he like hasn't been that good, and he's kind of been given the injury excuse a little bit here. But in the playoffs so far, Tatum 26, 10.4, 5.9 assists, 56.5% true shooting. Luka 28.3, 9.6 boards, 9.1 assists, 55% true shooting. So like statistically, they've been kind of the same, and Tatum's been, he's just obviously like the far superior defender and rebounder. I'm not here to say that Tatum's a better offensive player than Luka Doncic. I'm not, but I do think that there's going to be a Tatum versus Luka storyline, and I would love for Tatum to win the series. I don't think Tatum necessarily has to offensively outplay Luka, but I would love Tatum to kind of have the best defensive series of his career, similar to the defensive series he had against Kevin Durant in the Nets series in 2022. That's, I think, where he can like flip this narrative in. And also I'd love for him to flip the narrative away from like Tatum having to be this apex scoring superstar, and for people to finally understand the type of player that Tatum is and appreciate like those stats that I listed off before. It's the steals, it's the blocks, it's the rebounds, it's the ability to play 44 minutes every single night. So Luka versus Tatum, and like the narrative being Tatum's like this overwhelming all-around player compared to Luka being like this scoring crybaby. Hater came out at the end there.
I did a little bit there. You did so well to keep it under wraps until the end there. Noah, you're obviously like traveling around, following the team, covering these games in the arena, obviously looking for narratives to cover and different angles to look at and write about on CelticsBlog. How are you sort of perceiving either the Tatum-Luka matchup or the Tatum-Ant matchup?
Yeah, so I think I echo your comments. I think this is going to be one of those defensive series for Tatum. Like he's going to have to take a prime offensive player and really leave his mark on it. I think that's the kind of series this is going to be, particularly because of his length. And I don't think he's had to in this playoffs, like really be a stopper the way that we know he can be. But yeah, I'm excited to see that. But just generally speaking, I think this is a lot less about Tatum than it is about like all five of the starters. You know, we saw this last round. Like we want to make this a Tatum thing. Like we want to make this, even winning a championship, like just responding to something you were, one of you guys were saying earlier, I forget who, but this would kind of end all the questions around Tatum. Like, I don't think winning a championship would end the questions around Tatum. I think it would just make it like, was he the most important player on the team? Or, you know, what they had a super team or that they were way outmatched. Like I think there would still always be questions. That's just the nature of it, I guess. But what I'm really excited about is seeing how everything else kind of falls into place. I think I have a good feeling about what kind of performance Tatum can put up. But is Derek White going to play well? Are we going to see contributions from the bench? Like there's so many other uncertainties that we just don't know at this point. And Dallas scares me just because they have two guys that even if you play really good defense on them, like sometimes it just doesn't matter, right? And so that's the reality of it. Whereas I think Minnesota, you can scheme a little bit better. I don't think Anthony Edwards is as polished or as advanced in his like ability to read different schemes and kind of adjust the way that like Kyrie is, for example. So I don't know. I think this is one of those things that's going to come down to a lot of other guys, ultimately like seeing, I think Jaylen Brown might end up being the most important player again, just because he keeps benefiting from the fact that he's getting not the best defender on the other team. But looking at Dallas, like, I don't know who guards Jaylen Brown. Like that's one of the things that I've been thinking about just as this playoff run has been continuing.
Go ahead, Spoony.
Okay, all right. I didn't want to jump in on you, Ben, but yeah, I think that's kind of been the thing with Jaylen Brown, why he's had such a great playoff run so far. Is lots of teams have one good perimeter defender, very few of them have two, and Jaylen Brown's just been eating. And I think the way Dallas plays defense, I want to see Tatum have like a really high level passing series because they overload the strong side. So that skip to the corner is going to be wide open, and Tatum's shown he can make that pass. So I just, as long as he doesn't force anything, kind of plays within the scheme. And yeah, let's the other guys do their thing. We just recorded underrated plays, and there was a play deep in crunch time in like a 4-point game where Tatum, all he did was space. Both the Jays, they just spaced, and they ran a Derek White pick and roll. So I want to see that type of performance from him. And then defensively, we had him on the center a lot against the Mavericks, and let kind of KP just sit as the rim protector. I bet we will see that. I don't know how much. Luka's so smart that once he figures out that's what you're gonna do, he will figure out ways to attack it, whether it's bringing KP's guy up to set the screen. But I think he could have a massive defensive series, and I think he knows that, and I think he's going to be dialed in. I think both the Jays, because Jaylen does a really good job on Luka too. He gets a little foul happy at times, but and JB's perfectly suited to guard Kyrie, so I bet we see a ton of switching 1 through 4 as well. But I just think the way Tatum is impactful is not as loud and obvious as Luka Doncic, so he will never get kind of the appropriate respect. Like, people can't contextualize why his team's he's always been on a super team. Well, or maybe it's just the super team is partially or large part because of Jayson Tatum and the way he plays basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that sort of partially segues to the next subplot, which is like, what about the Jaylen Brown side of things? And he's kind of quietly fighting his own battle. Like, what if Jaylen Brown wins Finals MVP? Like, what does this series look like for Jaylen? And obviously, his performance props up Tatum as well. But before we get to that, Jake, we've got to get to an ad read here from our guys over at Prize Picks.
That's right. As the resident dominator of our First of Floor Prize Picks competition, I'll continue to run the Prize Picks ad. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you're locked in. The finals mean more on Prize Picks, and so do the star players. You get boosted payouts on select basketball stars that you won't find anywhere else. Prize Picks, and this bit is very important, offers injury insurance so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured this playoff basketball season. If you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. So that would have worked for the Derek Lively loss in the Mavs series. Maybe we should be picking lower on old Sammy No Buckets Hauser until further notice. Maybe we can reverse jinx him into returning to form potentially. So download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Beautiful. Jake, killing it with the live ad reads here
Thank
until
you.
one of us could get around to actually recording one to run in the show. But maybe we should just stick with the live reads because you're killing it, mate.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
No, I'm curious to get your take. Like, for example, what if Jaylen Brown wins Finals MVP? There's two sides to it. There's one, like the more obvious take, which is like, that's great. Like, he's probably deserving of an award like that in his own right. He just won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Then the more paranoid fan in me thinks, well, hang on a second. does this create like a negative narrative cloud above Jayson Tatum? And suddenly, if Jaylen's winning this award, are people starting to doubt Tatum's dominance and his ability to lead a team, given that the awarding of a Finals MVP to Jaylen Brown would sort of paint him with like that leadership brush and move the attention away from Tatum? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're already seeing it with the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. People scrutinizing his reaction. I'm sure you guys have seen the ESPN clip where they zoom into his face and like he's literally grinning. It's like the happiest I've ever seen him. Yeah. And then like, screenshot him. Like that was the worst clip you could have picked. Like the man is finally smiling. But anyways, yeah, I think absolutely narrative. And it's just one of those things where you have to, like, you know, as a fan, you have to decide, like, are you a fan of a player? Or are you a fan of a team? And Iguodala won the Finals MVP, right? Yeah. Steph Curry won 3 championships before he won a Finals MVP, right? So I don't think it necessarily means that you're not a star or a legend or a Hall of Famer. I think it'd be cool if Drew Holiday won Finals MVP or Derek White did. Like, you know, I thought Drew Holiday had a case in this most recent round that he could have won that award had he put up a little bit better numbers. And so I think that's the magic of the Celtics team, is that it's not one of those things where if they win the championship, you know LeBron's Finals MVP. Like there's a couple of different people. I would say there's 4 that could potentially win. Derek White, if he has a series like he had in the first round, he might be Finals MVP. So you have to just kind of put that aside and recognize that this is a group that will probably win multiple championships if everything goes according to how things should go. As far as yeah, maybe that's a hot take, but I think that, you know, maybe each of them will get one when it's all said and done. So I hope that doesn't become like the biggest narrative. Or at least a big narrative. I hope everyone can kind of just appreciate the ride. And I do think the Celtics will win this series regardless of who they face. But I can totally see just the way that the media has been over these last few days since they swept the Eastern Conference Finals, that we'll probably have a summer full of narratives around like who deserved the Finals MVP or Tatum didn't. You know, I'm sure we'll spin it negatively somehow because that's just the way that it tends to go. But I just think people shouldn't worry about it.
I hope JB wins it because it means we won the series, right? And that is by far the most important thing. JB's like, he's been awesome. He's been like the second, sometimes first option this entire playoff run and in playoff runs past, man. Like they're both awesome. And I'm with you, Noah. Like Drew Holiday definitely had a really good argument for Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I hope he has a really good argument for Finals MVP. I hope Peyton Pritchard wins Finals MVP. I don't care who wins it as long as it's a Celtic because it probably means we won the series. So I don't know. I feel like people will probably just jump into like the draft and free agency like a week after the finals happens. You know, people tend to move on. Things move fast in the NBA. So I'm not really sure this would turn into like a huge narrative if he wins Finals MVP. I'll be too happy to care anyway. Yeah,
that's probably the point. Is that who really cares? I wanted JB to win Eastern Conference Finals MVP because I wanted him to finally get something, and he ended up echoing my sentiments. I never win shit. So I was really happy for him, even though I thought that like these awards don't go to the analytical person who's supposed to win, like the Tatum on-off numbers, like
this team net rating.
Yeah, this team's just not good without Tatum. It is what it is, and I love Jaylen, and he's having his best playoffs by far so far. And so if he's able to continue this play, he'll probably get it. I think Jaylen getting the votes that he got is part of the anti-Tatum agenda and narrative that I think exists in the NBA, similar to Steph Curry, honestly, back then. No, and I actually looked up the numbers because I wanted to compare Steph to Iguodala in that series. Steph had 26 on 59% true shooting, whereas Iguodala, he guarded LeBron, but he scored 16 points per game. It felt like people were looking for a reason to give it to someone not Steph, and I think that's probably going to be what happens in the finals as well. As much as I would love for Tatum to shoot 45% from 3 in the finals, my guess is he probably ends up shooting 32% from 3, and then for whatever reason, that's the only thing that matters when it comes to Jayson Tatum, despite the other stuff. And so, I think it's very possible that Tatum doesn't win it, even if the Celtics win the series, and the narratives probably still continue for Tatum, unfortunately. But again, don't care who wins it. Give it to Horford. That'd probably be my number one choice. If I could guarantee the Celtics win the finals, that would be the guy that I would like to give Finals MVP to in an Iguodala type way.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Noah, what else have you got in your back pocket narrative-wise heading into these finals?
Trying to think. I think there's just a general question about Porzingis. I've heard this whole narrative around like, he did play for Dallas. Obviously, that was not a very positive stint. Um, you know, I don't know how much animosity the fan base has towards him. I would imagine it's probably not as vocal, but I don't think they respect him very much. Whereas I think at least Boston fans respect Kyrie's game. Like you don't very often meet people that don't think he's like a good basketball player at the very least. And obviously him having missed this entire playoff run is kind of adding fuel to maybe their perceptions of him. So I hope Porzingis is able to come back and be a part of this run. I absolutely think they can win a championship without him. I do a lot of segments with Bob Manning from CLNS, and I think he disagrees with me on this, and we talk about it quite a bit. But I think that this team that they have that has been there together for this entire postseason run absolutely can do it without Porzingis. But I don't want them to. I want him to be a part of it because I think it just sets him up for a weird situation moving forward, having not been a part of a run. Like, how do you come back next year and find where you fit in? And I've seen what it's done to like role players. Like Dante DiVincenzo has talked extensively about like missing the Bucks final run and like how that reduced his confidence as a player. So I think if he can just contribute, even if it's coming off the bench and giving 20 minutes a night and hitting a big shot in game 3, like that would be great. So that's one of the things that I'm kind of keeping my eye out for. And to be honest with you, like, I don't think we have any idea where he's at. I've heard so many conflicting reports. Joe half the time acts like he's never met Porzingis when we ask him about it. And then sometimes he realizes he's going too far and he'll be like, yeah, he's doing one-on-one work. We saw him in Cleveland. He looked like he was really progressing, and then we never saw him again. So I was starting to worry that he had a setback. And then today Joe said he never had a setback. So I think they've just been keeping him away from us. But the Porzingis storyline in general, I think everybody's like forgetting a little bit, but like how impactful he was when he was playing, especially defensively. Like it changed what this team can do as far as just like his defense on the perimeter, even his rim protection. Like he just adds another layer. And Al's been doing a great job. But yeah, I think that would be awesome if he was able to come back and play a big part of this run.
Yeah, the collective amnesia on what Porzingis did this year. Like he should have been an all-star over Scotty Barnes. Right. What an insane thing that happened. But Porzingis was so good, man. I've talked about how like Jared Allen and Porzingis like a similar tier of player as far as like top 30-ish player, but the fit on this team makes Porzingis like the impact of a top 10 to 15. He's just such a perfect fit and is so impactful on this team from both defense and offense. The fact that he can play with Al Horford, without Al Horford. Yeah, I hold bated breath every day for your tweets, hoping that something about Porzingis comes across the timeline. But yeah, they clearly know that how he's going, but they're not going to tell us, unfortunately. And yeah, I know Bobby Manning's got a doctor coming on the show. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like I think it. Yeah, and
we're so desperate that he's like turning a doctor, and that was so funny.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, yeah, because we played your video that you had of him doing that kind of one-on-one stuff. He was doing like some fake handoffs, little fadeaways, and like that was 2 weeks ago. So it's like if you're able to like kind of project from there to now, right. You've got to think he's like pretty close to being pretty good. And he said 20 minutes per game. If he can just play the backup big man minutes at like peak KP, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, that's a complete game changer for this team. If he can play 20 minutes a night at like 90% KP, as opposed to it having to be Luke Cornett, who I love, but he's not Kristaps Porzingis, that would be really nice.
Yeah, spacing feels really important against either of these Western teams. As Jack calls out your camera quality, Noah. But
don't make us pull up the offensive rebound again, Jack. We'll do it.
Yeah. Wasted. He's really important against both of these teams, I think, specifically because they are really big on rim protection teams that kind of dare you to shoot threes, and KP's really good at that. So I do think we can beat either one of them without him, but man, he would make it much easier. So I hope he's back. We got 7 more days till the finals start. So rest up, tall, thin man. Please get healthy.
Yeah, tall, thin man. The vibes as well. We've talked about the on-court stuff for Kristaps. I did not expect to fall in love with Kristaps from a vibes perspective. Remember, was it game 1 at TD Garden where he blocked a shot and kind of like wandered in past the baseline towards the crowd and started like geeing up everyone in the crowd? And like you could tell from that moment that how excited he was to be in Boston relative to the teams he'd played for prior to that. And he's really carried that through the entire regular season and into the early stages of the playoffs, as well as the J-Laps, Porzingis, cookies and cream connection as well. He brings a lot to the table vibes-wise, and for a final series to be without those additional vibes, that's sad, beyond the obvious on-the-court stuff. So hopefully he's healthy, but the lack of clear reporting here, you have to imagine they just really don't know. And with these soft tissue injuries, they are a little unpredictable like that. I think anyone who's kind of lived long enough and endured a similar injury knows that, like, you kind of feel shitty until you just don't. And he might be in the later stages of that feeling shitty stage, for lack of a more clear medical term there. But yeah, definitely.
Ben's also a doctor.
Clearly. Yeah, if I didn't just demonstrate that perfectly with my vocab. But yeah, Kristaps, huge part of the storylines heading into this one. We're kind of running out of time. We've got to get to some other stuff as well. I feel like we should just kind of rapid fire around the room on remaining narratives. Jake, is something else sticking out to you?
Yeah, rest versus rust. I think that narrative might just go away. The Mavericks are going to have pretty similar amount of time off. It looks like here, up 16 after the first quarter. Luka Doncic had 20 points in the first quarter, which is just kind of.
What a bum.
Yeah, Jesus, Moses. That's kind of scary. But yeah, so the rest versus rust thing, like, I forget who was talking. Maybe it's been Draymond. Like, the first game back after having so much time off. The thing about that is the Celtics have been kind of playing. They've got a lot of practice with that now because they barely played through March. Game 1 against the Heat, they had a bunch of rest off with the playing game. Incredible game. And then they finish in 5 versus Cleveland taking 7, so they got more rest. Amazing game 1 against Cleveland again. The Pacers series, they didn't have as much rest that time, but they played pretty well. They were obviously able to steal it. So I actually think that they've actually gotten reps with this rest versus rust thing.
Spoonie, Noah, any thoughts? I can jump in.
It's too scorching of a take. No such thing as rust.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as
and any strong opinions?
I mean, not really. I think ultimately for this particular Celtics team, especially Al Horford, rest is more important than knocking off the rest. These dudes have played 100+ playoff games. Like, I'm not worried about them being rusty. Maybe the jumpers will take a quarter to kind of get back, but I would much rather have the rest with this particular team, especially with KP.
Yeah, not to mention the rest, like, throughout the series as well, the multi-day gaps between games. Tough from a viewership perspective. We already feel like we're in this major hoops drought from a Celtics fan side of things, and then the multi-day gaps between games is tough as well. But you got to put yourself in the position of KP's calf, of Al's entire 37-year-old body, nearly 38-year-old body. Like, that's where the rest is valuable. Do you think it's a factor at all, Noah, the rest versus rust approach?
Yeah. So I think for Al in particular, like, the rest thing is huge. Like, we've looked at his splits all year when he has 2 days off, 1 day off, 3 days off. Like, it's the more time off he has, the better he plays. And so that part's huge. I think cumulatively, the fact that every round they've had like a 5-day break while the other team goes to 7 is obviously helpful. Like, you can see that they've gotten used to that rhythm. This is the 4th time now that they're waiting for an opponent while their opponent are duking it out. And this one will probably wrap up tonight, but the other ones were, play in game 7. So that's obviously a benefit. With Porzingis, I think is the one that I'm more worried about. Like, I think that's going to be a little bit tough from, like, just a rhythm standpoint, not just him as a player finding his own rhythm, but as a team. Like, they have this almost new identity over this past, couple of weeks, over a month now that they've played without him. I think everybody kind of knows their role. They've been playing well. And so that's the part that I'm more concerned about, is like, how do you insert a player that has been out for a while? But if anything, this will give them maybe time to do a little bit of like practice work, scrimmaging, whatever it is. So undoubtedly this is better. And I think there's just so much precedent now for them to come off this. Like, this is their 4th break, right? So it's not like they don't know what to do with themselves. I think they have a routine now. They have a rhythm for how they handle it. And hopefully that'll help them navigate it. I'm sure maybe the first time around, like, I know Joe said, like, I want to just play right away. And the players are like, we actually like breaks. Like, it's good for us. But now it's like there's a rhythm for it. So I think they're probably going to capitalize on the fact that they have this extra time.
Yeah, that's interesting. The fact that they've all been off for so long, like, does that actually enhance the reintegration of Kristaps Porzingis? I hadn't thought of that. Couple of other things very quickly. Can we rely on the bench at all? We have not been able to rely on Sam Hauser, Noah, at all, seemingly. Do you think this is more of a Pritchard series or more of a Hauser series? Or do you think with KP back, we go like 6 deep and just cap it at that?
Well, I will just say off the bat that my biggest bias is that I think every series is a Pritchard series, personally.
We know.
All-star potential.
I know, famously, and I do think that, if he's just given the chance to get comfortable, and he's, he played 9 minutes in game 4, which is fine. I get it. They're trying to close it out, but I know I do think I should be asked about Pritchard. I'm seeing Jackson distracting, but Sam Hauser I'm concerned about just because he's in an untimely shooting slump. And so that on its own is just, he goes through these and he's in one right now. I don't think it's because it's the playoffs. I don't think the Pacers were doing anything defensively that he can't handle. So that part, I've just a question of is he going to be out of it by the finals? Probably, historically he gets out of these and then he gets really hot. And I don't think he's scared of the moment. That's not where, because this happens cyclically. This is every few months he gets into one of these and it's just happening right now. Pritchard, as long as he gets the opportunity, he steps up. I mean, in Cleveland, he was phenomenal. That series, he was really good. And then he struggled more against Indiana. I actually think TJ McConnell was a pretty bad matchup for him because a lot of the same tricks that he has, McConnell has. And I think McConnell is a slightly better player than him. So I almost feel like he was playing a version of himself that was a little bit more mature and a little bit more polished. So anything else is probably better for him. That's what we've seen historically. He wasn't really able to get offensive rebounds because McConnell knew the tricks that he was pulling. So I don't know. I'm not worried about the bench, but I do think that Sam Hauser snapping out of a shooting slump would go a long way towards just instilling confidence in that unit because he was the leading scorer off the bench all year.
Yep.
It'll be really nice.
Yeah, somebody's got to play, right? You can't play Tatum and Brown 48 minutes and Drew and Derek 47. Oh, maybe you can, but I definitely think Pritchard can play in this matchup 100%. Him on Luka scares me a little bit, but there's ways we can protect him from that matchup, and I think he'll do a really good job on Kyrie and Daniel Gafford in drop. Pritchard eats that stuff up, man. He's third in playoff efficiency and as the pick and roll ball handler, so he's been awesome this entire playoff run. And against Indy, he wasn't at his best, but he didn't hurt us by any means. So he's going to play. He needs to play. I think he'll be just fine. Hauser, I don't know, man. I don't think he can. They're going to just hunt him every time he's out there. Kyrie is just too quick and shifty for him. He might be okay-ish on Luka, but I definitely think as long as KP's healthy, we're going to see a lot of Al, obviously, and a good amount of Pritchard. And then I don't know if Joe digs a little deeper, sees what Brissett can give him to steal some wing minutes here and there, maybe. But if Hauser gets the shot back, it's it's all moot, right? He can go 4 of 6 from 3.5, and it's oh, we're winning this game clearly. Yeah.
I will say, Luka and Kyrie don't quite play as many minutes as the Jays do. Luka last 6 games has played 41.7. Kyrie's played 40.8. So, they're not the guys that are typically, especially Luka, capable of going all the way into that 46-minute range. There's the Jays or Derek or Drew. So I think you can at least get, essentially you just need a couple of minutes with Tatum on the bench, 4 minutes. He's been playing 44 minutes now for basically the entire playoffs since he was since I think game 2 in Cleveland, and he was Joe, that's enough. It's a playoffs. I play all of the minutes and I don't get tired. So you just need to steal a couple of minutes. And it's one of those things where you start the series, you roll Sam out. If he starts hitting threes, he can continue to play. And then by the time you get through the series, maybe you're down to 5.5 players. I forget the Steven Jackson, the Van Gundy thing. You have 8, you play 7, but you trust 6 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Pritchard getting targeted stuff worries me a little bit. Obviously, offensively, his offensive dynamicism, if there's such a word. Please, Spoonie's nodding like there is. Great. Yeah. I'm not a journalist. That is obviously going to be very effective in this kind of series, whereas I think, as we know, as we've seen in the last series, that Sam Hauser's kind of wavers from time to time. But defensively, Hauser holds up. So if he can hit those threes, I think he can spell the Jays as he has been throughout the regular season. So we just need that shot to come back, Sammy Buckets. Let's go. Any other storylines that stick out before we get to an ad break here? The one other thing I've got is, what does this mean for Brissy TV? We saw the camera there. Important. In maybe the most important storyline heading into the finals. We saw the camera there in the huddle celebrating the awarding of the Eastern Conference Finals Larry Bird Trophy. What is Brissy capable of if given full access in a championship locker room environment? We know that there's at least one other documentary crew following the team around. I think there's something in the works for Netflix as well. Meanwhile, we've got Brissy there, feet on the ground, camera in hand, capturing it all from an inside perspective. I know I'm clutching at straws here with this narrative. This is why we're at the bottom of our list. Does anything else stand out to any of you guys before we move on?
Well, I'll just say I'm hyped for O'Shea's documentary. I saw he had that camera like the entire ceremony. And I was bummed because we were sitting really high up and it took us a while to get to the court. So we missed a lot of we came down right as Jaylen Brown was getting the award. And I think like we're all scrutinizing this one video of Tatum's reaction because there's literally one video. And I wish that I was there because even with my fuzzy camera on my phone, I still would have gotten like a bunch more angles. But I was thinking like his vlog is going to show us so many perspectives from that night that we didn't have. And that's what's so cool about democratizing. I was a little rude to Jack. It was just, I wanted us to go a little faster.
He was probably going too slow. Like he didn't get to that offensive rebound. Too slow.
Exactly. Yeah, we have
first to the floor, Jack. First to the floor out here. Come on.
I think we were all turning on each other in a high stress moment, and then it was all but yes, the vlog's gonna be awesome. And I asked them about it this week. I'm like really fascinated by O'Shea Brissett as a person. Jack, stop distracting me. By O'Shea Brissett as a person, just because he's so engaged. Like I've never seen anybody that's so like on his feet after anybody makes a shot. Like literally never sits, never stops cheering. Has like the best outlook on a situation. Has been talking about like how happy he is to be in this role. And then meanwhile, he's like giving us a documentary every week. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, huge storyline, Ben. Definitely.
Yeah, monster storyline.
I can't believe I saved that to last. Anything else? Obviously, this is a narrative-laden NBA Finals. Before we get to this ad read, Spoonie, Jake, anything else that's on the tip of your tongue there?
No, let's get to the really important questions we have for Noah after the ad read.
Yeah, when we come back, Noah, we're going to ask you about your first year on the Celtics beat. But first, here's a quick word from our sponsors over at Game Time. The NBA Finals begin June 6th, and instead of working like I should be or putting any effort into preparing for the next podcast, I'm sitting around daydreaming about getting myself to an NBA Finals game at TD Garden. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, used from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Our guy Jake Eisenberg's dad recently traveled from Australia to Boston to catch a couple of games during round 2. I think there was some sort of black hole time dilation stuff involved in getting there. He's thankfully home safe now, but when he was there, he used the Game Time app to sign up with code CLNS and get himself an incredible deal on tickets. I'm scrolling through the Game Time app right now, and there's a huge range of tickets available for games 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals in Boston for a wide variety of prices. Seriously, I really wish I knew about the Game Time app when I went to Boston for the finals in 2022. There's some great ticket prices up there right now. I love that you can enable the all-in pricing feature, which just shows you the actual price of the ticket without any surprise costs at checkout. You can see the view from your seats before you purchase your tickets, and Game Time offers last-minute deals. You can hang out outside the arena, wait for a last-minute deal to pop up, and save up to 60% on tickets, whether it's sports, concert tickets, comedy, and so on. And Game Time ticket coverage means your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
All right, Noah, I've seen your rookie season on the beat compared by Sam LaFrance to Wembanyama's rookie season. And I do like that comparison because it's like, well, I don't think you even had a Twitter before. And then because you were kind of like Wemby off in France. We didn't really know much about you. And then all of a sudden into the CelticsBlog Slack and then just dominating the scene. So how did you end up on the Celtics beat out of nowhere, and how was the first year on the beat?
Well, I'll answer the second part first. This has been like the most amazing experience ever. Super grateful that I got the opportunity, and also that it was this year because I think this season, like, you know, I don't want to jinx it, but to cover a team for the first time and have them go to the finals even is pretty remarkable. And it's just been really cool just to be someone who's followed the Celtics my whole life and to be able to see kind of behind the scenes how everything works, how the pressers work, just like all the little things you wouldn't think about, how people interact with one another. It's all been very exciting to me. And so, how I got involved was I saw that CelticsBlog was like hiring some writers, and I did a lot of journalism in high school, and I did a bunch of I had a Celtics website, and I managed our school paper about sports and all that. And then I was like, I don't think this is a realistic career path. So I went to college and studied political science and became a climate lobbyist. And that's what I do during my day. Yeah, that's what I also, that's the other thing that I do alongside this. And then, when I first got the job, I thought it was like, just like you get to write an article every week or so. And then I realized that you actually get credentials to at least a few games. And then once I went to a few games, I was like, I want to go to more games. And then I was like, how do I get the email list so I can go to practices? And how do I go to every game? And I think just one thing led to another, and eventually became like, it was CelticsBlog is like your access to really be a part of the Celtics beat. And then you can kind of go with that as far as you want to. And then I started doing stuff with Bobby for CLNS and just all sorts of things. So I think it was just one of those things where everything lined up really perfectly as far as timing. Like I had decided I wanted to cover the Celtics like 24 hours before the thing was posted on CelticsBlog. And now that I'm here, I realize that's like a once a year or more than that opportunity. And it just so happened to be like the day before. I was like, wouldn't that be cool if I just like covered the Celtics, because I'm like constantly thinking about it and talking about it. So I think it was a lot of just good fortune, good timing. And then the experience is just like really couldn't have been better. Like it has been just so rewarding in every way. And even just like the talking part, I never would have thought that I would be comfortable or want to be in front of a camera. And I still don't like love the camera, and I don't love sometimes when we're standing there at the Garden, I'm like, this sucks. But I do think I'm way more comfortable doing it. And it's one of those things where you just like push yourself out of your comfort zone. And then next thing you know, it's like something that's like becomes a little bit more enjoyable. So would highly recommend anybody that's thinking about taking a risk or trying something to do so. And I'm very grateful for CelticsBlog, because it is like a really well-respected establishment within like the Celtics organization. So I think like once you're there with their credentials, like they take you seriously. Even though it was like a week ago, I didn't know anything about this.
So I think I'm sort of reading the tea leaves here. It sounds like you were a Celtics fan before you started covering the team. I know you tweeted out that your dad was like dying for a Maine Celtics t-shirt.
That was awesome.
So has I'm assuming I'm right that you were a C's fan before. Has your fandom changed at all with covering the team?
Yeah, I would say I'm like less of a fan now. And that's something that like I heard reporters say that they were like, oh, I'm not a fan anymore, like I'm a reporter. And I was like, okay, sure. But I kind of get it. Like at this point, I do want them to advance because I want to continue to have the experience of covering a finals team. But like I was very stressed last playoff run. Like I remember like I was like, well, also they were a stressful team to follow last playoff run because they were like constantly about to get eliminated. But it was like enjoyable. And even this season when they had bad games, I was like fascinated. I was like, oh, how do you like think about this, or like, what are people going to say after? Like, how is this going to, what went wrong or things like that? I'm sure I'll increasingly go in that direction of being like more and more, just more interested in being a fan. I would probably say I skew more. If there's a fan in the press room, it's probably me. But I'm working on it. I'm working on like one time I said we when a player got traded, and like that was definitely a slip up. I had to be like, oh, I mean you guys in a question. There's still like a learning curve, but overall I would say like I'm more like fascinated and like learning about how everything works than being like cheering for them. Though I would say game 4 we all lost a little bit. Yeah, it was Lamar Stevens. I said we lost.
Yeah, I'm over it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Dude, that would be me, dude. I'd be like, Brad, I can't believe you've traded Marcus Smart. Like, how should we get a beer after the game? I'm so like, I'm just constantly trying to wrap my head around how people like go from exactly as you said, like living and dying with like the orange ball going in for the team wearing the right colors, to not. And so, yeah, I'm always like really interested in how that transition works. And I guess just like being around it every day and thinking about it from like a writing perspective is obviously going to change it. But I guess it's one good thing about being far enough away. I don't have the chance to take them up. I'm like, I just have no choice but to be a sicko fan.
Yeah, I feel very safe here from my vantage point in Australia, where my rampant fanaticism is nerfed by thousands of miles of ocean, and it can't get to the people who would be terrified being on the receiving end of it. But Noah, I think I speak for all of us here and everyone watching, where you covering the team, we've all really enjoyed watching and reading your work, and the younger people on the beat as well, like Jack Simone and Sam LaFrance and those people, getting that sort of new, fresh perspective, because like. there's a lot of old heads out there, and there's a lot of different perspectives and a lot of aging perspectives, and to get like a more online, fresher perspective, I think is very refreshing for a lot of people. So we're going to wrap it up there, but thank you so much for coming on. We're going to get out of here so we can watch the rest of this Wolves-Mavs game. Thanks for coming on, Noa. You can follow Noa on Twitter at Noa Dalzell NBA, as well as finding all her awesome written work at CelticsBlog.com. Noa, have you got I know we're like halfway through the game here, but without looking at the score, have you got a tip for who comes out victorious in this one?
I actually haven't looked at all at the score, so I don't know, but I think Dallas is going to win. I saw some comments about like Luka hitting like deep threes in the chat.
Yeah,
so that's
he's gone nuts.
What's the score though?
They are up 16. The Mavs are up 16 with 4 to go in the second quarter here. We are going to, go
My
ahead.
flights to Dallas were not refundable, so that actually is good news.
Huge.
I've already made this mistake once before, so.
Yeah, Jack was freaking out in the Pacers-Knicks Game 7 when the Pacers started to pull away, and he had to figure out all the Pacers, Indiana travel.
Indiana.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
During the Indy 500, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm gonna jump over to Celtics blog playback.tv/CelticsBlog. If anyone wants to come watch the game with me, I'll be streaming it in there from here. So we'll get the rest of the quarter in the second half, and hopefully Minnesota can push it to 6. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, awesome. Looking forward to that. All right, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be back with another pod in the next couple of days live on this YouTube channel. Spoonie, Jake, Noa, love your work, guys. Until next time, go Celtics.
I love the Celtics!